guys, welcome to Telling the Told and Untold. My name is Tshego. In the last video, we spoke about Colin Bouwer Jnr. and how he had murdered his wife in 2000 in New Zealand. It turned out that over 11,000 kilometers away, his estranged son, Colin Bouwer Jr., was also on trial in South Africa. Father and son were both on trial at the same time in two different countries, both for murdering their wives. You don't need to watch the last video to understand this case, but it doesn't hurt. So with that, let's go straight into today's case. Colin Bouwer Sr. married his first wife, Mariette, in November 1973, and they went on to have two children together. Colin Jr. was born in December 1974, and by 1975, Mariette and Colin Sr. were divorced. Colin Jr. didn't have any sort of relationship with his father and had only seen him about 5 times in his entire life. He was, however, really close to his mother and they had a fairly good life. Mariette assumed both the role of mother and father in her children's life. And Mariette was described to be a no-nonsense woman and she wanted everything to go her way. She was always right and everyone else was wrong. Colin Jr. at first glance was unlike his father. He made a living by installing and repairing air conditioners and ice machines, and although he was a well-built man, described to be good-looking, he didn't seem to have inherited his father's charm. He was, however, more intimidating. Colin Jr. met Ria at a relatively young age and he was 2 years older than her. He went to his matric farewell with her and soon after that they got into a serious relationship, and 5 years into their relationship Ria fell pregnant and she gave birth to a girl who they named Melissa. And about a month or two after that the two of them decided to get married. Their relationship was not always sunshine and rainbows. It said that Colin was a very jealous, domineering husband and on several occasions had thrown Ria out of the house together with her belongings. On the 7th of May 1999, the fire department received a phone call and it was said to be priority 1. And a priority 1 phone call means that the paramedics are attending a scene where the person is in a critical state, so they had to rush and the paramedics made their way to the Bouwer home with all of their equipment. They got into the home and they found a woman washing dishes. Some sources say that she was holding a child and she was emotionless. They asked her where the patient was and she told them to go into one of the bathrooms, and they walked into the bedroom, went to the bathroom, and they found a woman lying on the floor close to the toilet and she was not breathing. They saw that she had a mark around her throat and it went all the way around her ears. And the bathroom was a complete mess. There were bath salts and laundry balls all over the bathroom and some of them on top of her, and it was clear that she had been there for a while because she had already started decomposing and rigor mortis had started setting in. It was also clear that her underwear and bra had been cut off, and after this the paramedics just decided to look around the house just to see if they could find any weapons. And this is when one of the paramedics decided to look in one of the drawers in the kitchen because her undergarments seemed to have been cut off with something. So he opened the drawer and he found a knife, and the knife had little fabrics on it, and he already knew that this knife had been the one that was used to cut off this woman's undergarments, and this woman was Ria Bouwer. It also seemed as though someone had tried to physically and sexually assault her. Colin was then questioned about his earlier movements that afternoon, and Colin said that that morning he went to go fetch his daughter Melissa, and after that he just ran a couple of errands, but he didn't really remember where he was and what time he went, but he did remember going to East Rand Mall at some point during that afternoon, and he doesn't remember when last he called his wife Ria, but he did remember that he had called his mother about 4 times, and that he also went to go see his mother. And once he got to his mother's home, one of her friends, whose name is Patty, was there, and then they decided to go back to Colin's house because they wanted something known as an angle grinder. I'm not too sure what that is, but I'll try and put a picture. So they made their way to Colin's home, and also Colin had to go home because he had to take Ria to her sister's house in Pretoria, and they lived in Kempton Park. So he says that they got to the house, and once they got there they didn't see Ria, and his mother's friend said that she saw some sort of letter that Mariette had found in the bedroom, but Colin would later deny having any knowledge of the letter. Colin also said that once he got to the house, he just found a random knife on the kitchen table, and he just decided to put it in the drawer. The investigation into Ria's murder began, and her mother Louise was completely devastated. She would go to the house that her daughter shared with her husband and her granddaughter, and every time she got there she would try and ask Colin as well as his mom Mariette what happened and just try and get some answers, but they just really wouldn't answer her. They didn't even have any thoughts or theories, and they just seemed emotionless, like they really didn't care. And then one morning Louise woke up and she discovered that both Colin and his mother had blocked her, and when she tried to go see her granddaughter they wouldn't let her see Melissa, and she just really didn't know what else to do. The investigation at this point had come to a complete standstill, so she decided to hire a private investigator, and his name is Slang van Zyl. And Slang is known to investigate men who have murdered their wives. Slang met with Louise, and Louise just told him everything that she knew about Colin and Ria's relationship, as well as what police had. And you would think that Colin would be happy that his mother-in-law got a private investigator to look into his wife's murder because police officers had nothing else to go on. But Colin was extremely upset and angry with Louise, and he was so upset that at some point he had even threatened Slang and said that he would get rid of him. The PI also got pictures of the crime scene, and there was something that stuck out to him, and that was that the bathroom was such a mess and there were some things on top of Ria, and by just looking at it he immediately knew that the scene had been staged to look like a burglary, like people had broken into the house and then they had found Ria there, and because of circumstances they decided to assault her and then murder her. But they didn't take anything. There were radios, jewelry, TVs. They literally took nothing. And they also got fingerprint experts to just go through the crime scene as well as the house to maybe try and find some fingerprints, but they didn't find any other fingerprints besides the one that belonged to Colin as well as their domestic helper, and they didn't understand why. And one of the reasons could just be because maybe it was Colin, or maybe the perpetrators had worn gloves. Another thing that also stood out to Slang was what paramedics said about Colin and his mother's reactions. They were completely emotionless, almost as though they didn't care that her daughter-in-law or his wife had just been found murdered in the bathroom. And Slang said that most people have a different emotional response to finding out that their spouse has been killed. Sometimes they're completely emotional, sometimes they're even angry and shout at the police officers, but they always try and help and just help in any way that they can with the investigation. But Colin did no such thing. He was just not interested. They also looked at cell phone tower records, and Colin had said that he had went to the East Rand Mall at a certain time, but when they looked at the cell phone tower records, his phone didn't ping off of that tower that was closest to the mall. It pinged off of the tower that was closest to his house, and that just meant that he had lied about his whereabouts. About 7 months after Ria's murder, in March 2000, strange things started happening. Colin's mom, as well as his daughter, were kidnapped. Mariette said that she was driving Melissa to daycare when 2 armed men hijacked her pickup truck and then disappeared with Melissa. Mariette was found a few hours later completely unharmed, and soon after that they found Melissa in an abandoned car, and she was also unharmed. About a month after that, Louise, Ria's mom, received a voodoo doll. And at this point, Christmas had already passed, and because it was her first Christmas without her daughter, she had decided to put some Christmas decorations on Ria's grave. And when she received this voodoo doll, the head was made from Christmas decorations as well as needles, and it was the same Christmas decorations that she had put on Ria's grave. And then the next day or the following week, she tried to leave her house and a random man attacked her. He hit her in the head as well as her body and broke her leg. And after this, Louise would receive 4 more voodoo dolls, and these voodoo dolls all had different things. One had a condom on its head, and another one had a flexible genitalia. And even though it has not been proven, it is believed that Colin and Mariette had staged the hijacking and that Colin was behind the voodoo dolls as well as the assault against Louise. There was nothing direct linking Colin to his wife's murder, and they only had circumstantial evidence. This was until the state attorney received an anonymous phone call. And Slum would say that this phone call was from another PI, and it turned out that Colin had hired his own private investigator to kind of look good, almost as though that he was trying to help solve his wife's murder, but he had really just hired this PI so that he could find out what kind of evidence they had in his wife's murder. And in this anonymous phone call, Colin's PI said that he was scared of him and that Colin would get rid of people who stood in his way. The PI also said that he had recorded a conversation that he had had with Mariette, and in this conversation, Mariette admitted that her son Colin had killed his wife, but she said that it was accidental. According to her, Colin got home and found Ria in the main bedroom, and she was writing a letter. This supposed letter has never been found. In the letter, Ria said that she was going to leave Colin and she was going to leave with their daughter, and she also claimed that Colin was not Melissa's biological father. And Colin got really upset finding out that she wanted to leave, and he didn't understand because he thought that he did everything for her and that she was happy. So they got into an argument, and during this argument he just wrapped his hands around her throat, and next thing he knew she was gone. And then after this, he called Mariette, and then she immediately left work and met him at a cafe. And then she just told him to go all over town so that people could see him and that he would have an alibi. They later returned to the Bouwer house together and made it look like a burglary as well as an attempted assault. And then Colin also tried to make the house look like people had broken in, and then they decided to call police. Mariette did not know that the PI was recording this conversation, and it seems as though she only confessed to him because she just wanted to get it off of her chest. In May 2000, a warrant for Colin's arrest was issued and Colin Bouwer Jr. was arrested. As soon as they arrested him, he started to blame Ria's mom, Louise, her brother, as well as her entire family. And he claimed that she had been both physically and sexually abused as a child and that they were behind her death. Colin also said that he would be exonerated and that all the evidence that the state had was circumstantial and that he would be a free man after the trial. During the trial, one of Mariette's friends, Elspa van Zyl, testified in court that Mariette had told her in confidence that Colin had killed his wife. She said about 3 months after Ria's murder, she was at work and she received a phone call from Mariette, and Mariette sounded distraught and she said that she needed to tell her something but she couldn't do it over the phone. So after work in the evening, they then decided to meet at Caesar's Palace at the casino, and they were having a few drinks, and this is when Mariette broke down and she said that Colin had murdered his wife, but it was an accident. She said that the two of them were arguing, and then Ria lashed out at Colin, and Colin got angry, so he grabbed her by the throat. And Elsab says that she never told a soul about her conversation with Mariette because Mariette said that it was an accident. Mariette's team was showed the evidence that they had, and she said that she was not going to testify against her son, and all the evidence that they had was circumstantial. But she did end up confessing to helping Colin cover up Ria's murder, and she pleaded guilty. Her defense team then asked that she be sentenced to house arrest, saying that she needed medical care following a workplace injury a few years ago, but the prosecution sought her imprisonment and said that Mariette showed no remorse. Eventually, Mariette Kruger was found guilty and she was sentenced to 2 years. They then met up with Colin's team and they agreed to plead guilty. But Colin said that he was going to plead guilty to culpable homicide and not homicide. It also turned out that he had told one of his friends that Ria was seeing someone else, and that on the day of her murder, he arrived home and then he saw a white van, and he says that that man was there. Colin says that even though this supposed person that Ria was having an affair with was there, he didn't confront this man, and after he had left, she told him that she was leaving him, and he thought that it was unfair because he had a successful business, they were married, and that they had a daughter. And then he and Ria became involved in a very heated debate, and then he grabbed her throat, choked her, and then she lost her life. He also said that after this, he had called police, and then he tried to stage the scene to make it look like a burglary as well as an attempted assault. So he was the one who had taken the knife and cut off her underwear and then put the knife back. He also kept open the house door as well as a security gate so that it could seem like the intruder just managed to get into the house. And Colin had also spoken to several other people so that they could provide an alibi for him. Without direct evidence linking Colin to Ria's murder, they thought it would be too risky to try him and get a guilty verdict without reasonable doubt, so they accepted his plea of culpable homicide. And Colin was found guilty, and he didn't appeal his conviction or sentence. Colin Bouwer Jr. was just 27 years old when he was sentenced to just 8 years for the murder of his wife, Ria Bouwer. Today, in 2025, there is no new information about Colin Bouwer Jr., but it is safe to assume that he has been out of prison for over a decade and is continuing his life, whilst Ria doesn't have that opportunity and will never see her daughter grow up. And that's it for today's case. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out my channel a lot. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.